So today we're going to talk about plant propagation. And so this is my backyard. This is some stuff that I already had around the house. And like I said, I really like plants. I like making plant babies. I like to see something turn from a big plant into a small plant and then grow into something really fun and pretty. So I'm going to start with talking about seeds. So seeding plants, to get seeds, you have to have sexual propagation. Okay, so one part of the plant has to fertilize the other, like we were talking about the flowers, to create seeds. So again, this is seeds are sexual propagation. So I have prepared a flat with natural and organic seed starting mix, and I filled it up and I actually wet it first. You want this to be wet before you put your seeds in, because if you water your seed tray and you water it too heavily or just it's too fast or hard, you can end up washing your seeds right out. So you want the ground or the soil wet before you start. So you're gonna look at your plant, and I wanted to tell you about these seed packets. Again, it's gonna tell you your plant hardiness zone, which we'll still talk about. And it's going to tell you how long it takes to actually germinate, which means the seed to sprout, so that you can see the little sprout. It's going to tell you the average height and how long it takes to get to a decent sized plant. If you're talking about vegetables, it'll tell you how long it will take for it to actually grow a fruit or vegetable for you. Okay, so what you're going to do, you can use your pinky or a pen or a pencil or something and just poke little holes in these trays. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it will take quite a while, but you typically want to put maybe 1 to 2 seeds, typically 2 in each little hole, because not all of the seeds will actually sprout. And that's part of when you talk about like the gardening merit badge, it will ask you to actually germinate a pack of 100 seeds and to actually go back and count and see how many actually came to fruition, because not all of them will sprout. Okay, so again, you're going to drop your couple of seeds in each little compartment, and then what you're going to do in this type of tray, and these trays can be purchased at a store. I had this one on hand from previous use and I just cleaned it up. You're going to put the cover on, and this is making like a little greenhouse, and I tend to keep these inside just because in a nice sunny window, because when they're this tiny and they get damaged outside, it is hard to keep them safe. Okay, so once you've done this, again, this was coleus, packs of coleus. It's a leafy ornamental. You'll have a whole flat of beautiful coleus just like this. Okay, and then you'll transfer them over into a new container or into the beds in your garden. Okay, so that was propagation by seed. So now I'm going to talk to you about propagation by root. Okay, so these are potatoes, and you probably have had some either sprout on your counter or in a drawer or something in the fridge before. And what these are, they're actually the root of the plant. You won't see a potato growing roots. It actually sprouts, and these are going to be the leafy stems that stick out above the dirt. Okay, so I like to grow potatoes in 5-gallon buckets. So I started these about 2 weeks ago. And what we do, they have to have holes. So I've used my drill with a nice large drill bit, and you drill about 5 or 6 holes in the bottom of the bucket. And then what you do is you fill the bucket with about 4 inches of soil in the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to put about 3 to 4 inches of soil in here, and this is a mix that I've made. I made it out of peat, some cow manure, which is mixed with sand and compost, and then regular compost, mixed compost. All right, so I've got the potatoes. I got about 4 inches of soil in here. You can see this. Sorry, about 4 inches of soil right here, and I'm going to put 2 of these little potatoes in. All right, and then we're going to fill it the rest of the way. Well, I say the rest of the way, about 3 to 4 inches from the top with soil. And then you're going to water this down really, really, really well. My soil's already wet because it was exposed to the rain yesterday. but I'll still water this down really well. But this is root propagation. So we're propagating from the root of a plant. So this one is really easy for you to accomplish, okay? All right, so once I've had enough soil in here, I'm actually going to put this on a couple blocks just to raise it up. I want some bricks underneath it. And that's because if you sit this right on your patio or right on the soil, it's going to just plug those holes right up and you won't drain. Because potatoes, if they're sitting in water, they will turn to mush and they will not grow. You will not get potatoes out of this. So in this one I started about 2 weeks ago. Remember I said I filled it about 3 inches from the top. Well, by now it has compacted down, but you can see that those potatoes that were way deep have actually started sprouting, and they're going to make this nice bushy kind of vine. It's not going to be as pretty as the ornamental potato vine that we see in our landscapes, but it still makes a nice pretty bushy potato plant. So now that that soil's packed down, after a couple of weeks and that I see the sprouts, I'm actually going to top that whole thing off with soil up to the top, because I don't want it to, I actually want it to have lots of space. So the potato again is the root, right? So it's way down here. And so the space up here is where we're going to find all of our potatoes. So in about 10 to 12 weeks, these vines will start to die back, really get really yellow and dry. And that's when we know it's ready to harvest. So they'll actually get some little flowers on them and die back, and then they're ready to pull the potatoes out. And it makes it easy because they're in these buckets. You just turn the bucket upside down and you pick the potatoes out. So it's fun. And you can do with this with just about any potato. If you store the potatoes that you get at the market, sometimes they're sprayed with stuff that keeps the eyes from developing as quickly, but eventually they do sprout normally, and you can actually go ahead. So I've filled that up and use market potatoes. All right, so now we've planted potatoes, we've used seed propagation, we've used root propagation. I'm going to actually show you how to propagate with some cuttings. So I have some cuttings here, and I'll tell you what these are in just a second. But my container's dropped. Okay, I'm actually going to use this. So we talked about the coleus leaves, and again, that's what these are. These are the leafy ornamentals, right? You see them in a lot of landscapes. So there's a second way that you can propagate these. Okay, so I've actually already trimmed these, and what I'm going to do is I've only got a couple little leaves here. I'm actually going to stick that right in the soil, just the cutting, and this will actually easily grow roots right from those leaf cuttings, and it will make a nice big plant just like the others will. All right, and you can do that with all sorts of different coleus colors. So that's an easy one that you might find in your yard to use with some of the requirements that you have for this badge. I also want to show you, this is the top of a pineapple, right? So if you just cut just enough so that you've got a nice little flat base here, and I've got a pot with just some soil in it. If I put that down in the damp soil, it will actually grow roots. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of my daughter's plants, so it's not in the best condition. But this is a nice tall, see how big that's gotten? It was no bigger than the other pineapple I had. And if she takes care of it, it takes about 18 months before you actually get a pineapple out of it, but it will grow. And real quick, again, I'm going to talk about something different because I've got it right here. This is celery. So this is actually not propagating a new plant at all. What this is, the old plant, we chopped off what we needed, and if you'll put this down in water, it will reroot, okay? You're not really growing a new plant again, but it will reroot and continue to fill in from the center. And if you had celery plants that were in your garden, you could just pluck off the outer leaves or outer stems that you need and use them and leave it, and it will continue to produce until it goes to seed and dies back. Okay, so I want to show you another method of propagation with cuttings. The coleus was leaf cuttings, and this is one of my absolute favorites. So I like gardenia plants, and I've got some on my fence over on the wall. And so to propagate some of these little woodier stemmed plants, I like to use sand. And if you'll get play sand, it's cleaner. It's been cleaned better for playgrounds or kids' sandboxes. And the sand is actually it's more sterile than soil. So when you're working with little baby plants, you want to have nice, clean medium for them to grow in. So what I'm doing here, I've got what one of these like wash tubs from the dollar store, and this is what we use to wash our dishes in at camp. So I'm filling it with sand, and my sand got wet, so it's not quite as sterile as I'd like. But you want wet sand anyway. So what you're going to do, you're going to fill this up about 2/3 of the way. Smooth it out, and then you're going to actually use a pencil. I don't even know how many stems I have here, but what I've done is gone ahead and cut about 4-inch little pieces. You can do 4 to 6 inches of gardenia off the top of my plant, and you definitely want young pieces, so you can't do this in the winter as easily as you can about right now through about midsummer. Okay, so I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so 12, and that's what we needed for our experiment anyway. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking off all but the very top 2 leaves. And then I'm going to take my scissors. And you want clean scissors, you can wipe them down with alcohol. I'm actually going to snip a good bit of those leaves off. And I'm doing that because you want this plant to put all of its energy down into rooting. You don't want it to put energy into making new leaves or new flowers, okay? Flowers are absolutely detrimental to rooting things because the plant is making its, it's putting all its energy into the flower instead of roots. So what I'm doing, I'm poking holes, and I'm going to put my little rooted cuttings that I have stripped down and trimmed the leaves off, okay, into each hole. And then I'm going to make sure that this is very tight around each leaf. I don't really want them touching each other. Okay, so they're spaced out well. And then what I'm going to do is, okay, if yours soil is not wet, you want to thoroughly soak this sand down before you put your roots in. Again, you don't want to wash it out while the cuttings are in there. So what I'll do is actually take a white bag. Don't use any other color. If it's clear, the sun can shine straight through and burn your plants. And if it's black, it can retain too much heat and cook the plants as well. So you want a white trash bag. You'll put the whole thing right inside the bag and then tie it up, okay? What that's going to do is trap moisture and humidity, which is what these plants really want to root. Now, there are several other plants you can use this method on. I've actually had success with azaleas, but you're going to actually put these trays out of the sun. You don't want a lot of sun on them while they're doing this. They're really using that heat to convert energy. So you don't want a lot of sun. The sun will cook the plants, okay? So I also have a couple other things I want to show you. You have these things, the purple, I call it purple queen. Some people call this wandering Jew. It's actually a different variety than true wandering Jew. But we have like this in our yard quite often around here. It roots very easily. So again, for your requirements, if you see this somewhere, I don't want to advocate for stealing, but if you see it somewhere, maybe ask a neighbor or somebody if you can cut some of these out of their yard if you don't have them. These root very easily. All you have to do is have some beds. You can stick those right in the soil And so root these first, and then you're going to want to transplant them later. Okay, so these will just pick up and grow. Literally just shove these right down in good soil. Okay, and I'll show you this. My little coleus is starting to wilt already. I had it wrapped up in paper. So when you are rooting these, you want to keep them in the shade. They are a shade plant anyway, but we want to keep them out of the sun, especially during the rooting process, because they're not able, with no roots, to take up water as well. And they do need lots and lots of water. There may be other types of plants. This is more of a clumping, same type of plant, but it's a clumping variety. And I wanted to show you this one as well. So some people call this airplane plant. I call it spider plant. So these little spiders that jump off the plant actually will root right on their own. And you can stick them right down the same way in the soil. They just kind of need to rest on the top, because if this plant was sitting on the ground, these would start putting roots down in the ground off next to it. So that's how this plant propagates. So lots of these little ones, that's how I made this plant, okay? I had just a few of these little ones, and it shot out into this in no time, less than a couple months. I want to show you this plant right here. This was actually, this pot had soil in it. It was sitting right next to my garden area where I have these mother type plants. So what this is called, it's called mother of millions. Some people call it mother of thousands. But if you look, every one of these tiny little plants, and I'll come closer, or leaves, have tiny babies all over it. So you can see these will drop, these little pieces will drop into the soil and shoot up babies. So this whole plant, which I think looks very beautiful, actually did this on its own. I didn't touch it. So this is one variety, this is another one. These are some babies that dropped in here, and it made this on its own. Okay, so these dropped into this empty pot and grew just like that. Okay, so we've talked about seed propagation, we've talked about root propagation, we've talked about propagating from cuttings. Now I'm going to talk to you about tubers. Okay, so you might know this plant, again, this time of year, these are starting to pop up everywhere. People have caladiums in their yard. Okay, and a lot of people think caladiums come from a bulb. Well, an onion is a bulb, a tulip is a bulb. Lots of things are grown from bulbs, but these are actually tubers. And they put up these ornamental leaves, and they're very pretty. You can clump these into a flowering pot and grow them from tuber. But these are their tuber. This will put out roots, and this is the start of one of these leaves. So this is the end result from the tuber. Okay. Also, just want to tell you that you can propagate lots of things in water. So viney plants are excellent. If you just trim off a little piece of these viney plants, you can stick them right down in water and they will grow. The coleus as well. Once they get really tall, you can trim off the tops, leave half of them, put them in water in a pretty vase in the house, and those things will grow roots extremely quickly. So you can propagate those in water as well. Another thing that you can propagate is ginger. Again, you've got ginger root, and this is similar to the potato, whereas this is the root itself. And you will have a nice big plant. You can do these in the 5-gallon buckets as well. And another thing that you can do in the 5-gallon buckets is make a compost bin. So just like I had the potato bucket before, you'll actually drill some holes around the outer edge toward the base. You can bury this and then have the hard plastic lid on it. What you do is put it in an area of your yard where you can actually bury it part weight. And then if you throw your scraps in it, every once in a while, yes, it's stinky, you'll pull the lid off and add your scraps and then stir it up. And what happens with the holes, that allows moisture to get in. You'll need to water it a little bit. It also allows bugs and it allows worms to get in, and those help break down that material. So that's another thing that helps our plants is to use compost and natural compost that you're bringing in from your house. Helps keep it out of the landfill. So that's another environmentally friendly thing for you to do. All right, so that's about everything I have. I will see you back on the actual class. Thanks.